Hello, welcome again to Miami Community Health. Live longer with Dr. Anthony Gonzalez. Another important health topic. March. March is National Nutrition Month. We're going to talk about nutrition. Nutrition's very important. Over 40% of Americans are obese. We know that diet is related to disease. Probably 80% of diseases can be avoided, cured if you control or if you fix your diet. So we are going to talk about what's the amount of sugar you can eat. Is intermittent fasting good or not? Should I be eating at nighttime? What fruits or vegetables should I be not eating or eating for that matter? So let's learn a little bit about nutrition. And to understand about nutrition, we brought a dietitian. Lucette, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All righty. So first, the question I asked you before we started, the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist. It's National Nutrition Month. So should we be talking to nutritionists or dietitian? Explain that to us.
Okay. So all dietitians are nutritionists, but not all nutritionists are dietitians.
Okay.
So the term dietitian is a protected title. That means that the person has gone through accredited bachelor's and master's programs in dietetics. So that's usually about 6 years of education there before qualifying to do a supervised practice. That's almost a year long. So it's year number 7 there of education and experience. And then you're qualified to sit for the board exam for dietetics. And that's how we earn the RD, the registered dietitian credential. So that's what the word dietitian means. It means all that education and experience that gives us the title that we earn. And of course, we have to maintain the title through continuing education.
And so what does a nutritionist, what is their pattern of studying or what?
It's not defined. So someone that's a nutritionist may have just taken an online course for a few hours. That's why I said all dietitians are nutritionists, but not all
nutritionists or dietitians. Okay, so the key is you want to make sure if you're obtaining advice, you're getting it from a dietitian.
Yes.
All right, great. So that makes it clear. All right, so National Nutrition Month. Why are we celebrating it? Why do we want to bring awareness?
Sure. So National Nutrition Month is every March. It's just a campaign ran by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics to bring awareness to nutrition, to help, inform people on our choices, to encourage people to make informed choices about their health and what we eat. I think every month is Nutrition Month, though. I mean, it's important.
Yeah. Every day is Nutrition Day. I mean, I think I tell my patients it's a daily battle, whether you're dealing with obesity or you're dealing with health conditions. Every day it's important.
Because we have to eat every day.
Yes. And is it true you are what you eat?
I think so. I mean, what we eat, our carbs, proteins, and fats get digested and incorporated into our cells. So I do think we are what we eat.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Carbs.
Sure.
I grew up through the era where it became very popular to avoid carbs, the Atkins diet.
Right.
I remember the Atkins diet. I did that I don't want to tell you how many years ago when I was in residency, and I used to eat eggs and eat bacon and eat patties of burgers with cheese on it, no buns.
Right.
Is carbs important? Avoid carbs? Atkins diet? Talk to us a little bit about that.
There seems to have always been a fad diet around carbs, whether it was the Atkins or South Beach diet, or right now the low carb trendy diet is actually keto-like diets. So we know the true keto diet is basically no carbs, but people follow a keto-like diet, which is essentially a lower carb diet like the Atkins. So, it's been around, it's been trending. These are usually fad diets that severely restrict carbohydrates more than what we probably need. When it comes to carbs, we have to choose carbs cleverly. Carbs are important for our function. They digest into glucose, which is the preferred fuel source for our cells. So if we want to just fuel our bodies the way it's meant to be fueled, we would be having moderate portions of carb with every meal. But yeah, that word moderate, that word low carb, it looks different for everyone. When it comes down to portions and how people actually follow a low carb diet can be different from person to person. But we do need carbs at the end of the day, just the right amount though.
And now not all carbs are the same, right?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that. Break that up for us. Like, what are some of the all types of carbs and the good ones and the bad ones?
Sure. So that's why lower carb diets can be a little harder to follow because there's so many sources of carbs. And even just from our healthful sources of carbs, we have whole grains, grains in general, but preferably want to choose more whole grains to get more of that fiber. We have all sources of fruit that count as carbs. We have our starchy vegetables that count as carbohydrates. Even a more hidden source of carbs is plain milk and yogurt has natural sources of carbs that, if you're having in moderation, it doesn't really count significantly. But if you're drinking a lot of milk in a day, it's enough carbs to raise your blood sugar if you're drinking more than a glass a day. So
Mm.
you want to keep an eye on things like that. And then, of course, we have our other sources of carbs that are full of sugar, refined sugars, refined grains that we want to limit as much as possible.
You're talking about like the candies
Yeah.
and the sodas.
Of course.
Right.
Well, when it comes to sugar sweetened beverages, that's the one we should really be trying to avoid. With the other ones, we want to limit because realistically, a lot of people do enjoy eating some sweets and it's okay. Like we always say, moderation, but moderation looks different for everyone.
And how about the artificially sweetened
Sure.
drinks? Is that I've
Sure.
heard mixed things about that it even can stimulate insulin. So Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi.
Right. So when it comes to diet products, sugar-free products, basically these are all, sweetened with sweeteners, non-nutritive sweeteners that don't have calories, don't have carbs or sugar, so they don't raise your blood sugar. So from that standpoint, that's a good thing. But are they the answer that we want to rely on? Not really. So whether it causes, or it may, nothing really causes, from the research, it's like suggests. So some people that consume non-nutritive sweeteners may crave things later on, more carbs during the day, like you said, like an insulin response. So like it could do things in our body, right, that may cause us to later on eat more carbs or crave more carbs. It can also disrupt our gut microbiome. So we want to keep an eye on how much sugar and also sweeteners we have in the diet and keep it lower.
All right. Fruits. You mentioned fruits in regard to a carb,
Yeah.
and talk to us about fruits. Good, bad. Talk to us about fruit juice.
Sure. So
Right? Because I learned that it's a little different. Eating an orange is different than having orange juice.
Yes. So fruit in its whole form is great for us, of course, within the recommended serving sizes, which is for most adults aiming for 2 portions of fruit per day. And that way we get the antioxidants, the vitamins, the minerals, and the fiber. So the difference between eating your whole fruit and drinking the juice is the fiber. So also when we drink juice, we tend to drink more than 1 or 2 servings of fruit within a liquid form. So it doesn't provide the satisfaction. It raises our blood sugars right away significantly, and we don't get that fiber to help blunt the blood sugar rise. So it's always better to eat your fruit than to drink the juice.
All right. So we talked a little bit about low carb diet. We talked about the Atkins. We talked about the keto. Let's go into a little bit of these plant-based diets
Sure.
and vegan diets. Of course, at the end, you're going to tell us the best diet. We're leaving that as the punchline, and you're going to tell
Secret.
everybody what the best diet is.
Yeah.
But talk to us about the plant diets and the vegan diets. I saw a
Sure.
special on Netflix talking about how the meat products, how it runs you down and kind of, that we shouldn't be eating any type of meat products. Everybody should be on some type of, vegetarian or vegan. Please tell us the difference. And is that true?
Sure. Well, let's talk about the plant-based diets.
Okay.
So that's a term, it's a general term. So it's not a well-defined term. It's just a loose term that describes plant-based ways of eating that can include vegan and vegetarianism, but it also can include dietary patterns that have reduced amounts of animal protein and animal products. So you can be plant-based without giving up all of your animal protein, animal products, but you can have it in a reduced amount and that strong focus on plants. And what are the plants in the diet? It's the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, the beans and legumes, the nuts and the seeds, which is also the base of like the Mediterranean diet, which we know so much about from research that's so good for our heart health and overall health. So we want that base, whether you define yourself as a plant-based person or a healthy person. These terms might actually be a little confusing for people or misleading or misguiding because sometimes people follow the vegan diet and they call themselves plant-based, but veganism is the most strict form of a plant-based diet that truly doesn't work for everyone's preferences or lifestyle. So if someone's aiming to be plant-based, you can start with some steps of just reducing your animal meat. Well, even before that, asking yourselves why. Why do you want to go plant-based? So if you do want to give up all animal protein, all animal products, that's okay. We just want to make sure it's a personal decision that you truly want to do for yourself. And if you're doing it for health, but you feel like you don't want to give up all animal products or animal meats, you don't have to. This is a dietary eating pattern that we want to keep for life, not just temporarily be on and off. You can experiment and see which pattern is better for you, but at the end of the day, it's not a failure if you still want some animal meat or animal protein or products. It's just about really focusing on the plants, not just the animal.
And you can incorporate some of the proteins, some of the animal proteins in that diet, and it won't be a
Yes.
plant-based
So
diet, but
we would have a mindset shift. So instead of looking at the animal protein like the entree, we would look at it like a side dish. And even on the Mediterranean diet pattern, if you read a little bit about it, that's how they also describe animal protein and products. So it's seen like a side dish. So like the rice and the beans or the garbanzo stew, would be like the entree, the main course, and the animal meat or seafood or whatever the animal protein is would be the side dish.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, how about additives? Things like powdered protein, supplement, protein bars, things like that that are not natural foods. Are those good for us?
So when it comes to, well, you mentioned protein, so we can focus on that one. It's a ultra processed form of food. So protein powder, the main thing about it is that it's convenient. It's not extra special than eating your protein. It's just really convenient. You mix it with water and you have a protein shake ready. You didn't have to prep or cook or, make
You
sure
can travel with it.
exactly. It's shelf stable. You don't have to refrigerate it. So it's very, very convenient, but it's not any more better than eating our animal protein. And when we talk about animal protein or just or even plant-based, it's in its whole form, which means it's not just protein. There's vitamins and minerals in chicken and in beans, that you don't get when the protein powder is like isolated. So we always want to encourage the whole form of eating. And then for convenience, if you need the protein powder, also people that have chronic illnesses may be relying on or post-surgery, during these stressful occurrences in life or medical challenging times like where protein is needed in higher amounts, the protein powder can be very convenient. But for the general population, we want to focus on eating our protein.
Eating real food.
Yes.
All right. And how about the bars? Or that's the same
The
principle?
same thing as the
Same
powders.
principle.
The bars may be a little more concerning because what binds the bars? It's usually a form of syrup or sugar. So usually when you look at protein bars, I did this one time in the grocery store and spent way too much time in that protein bar aisle trying to find one that the top 3 ingredients were not a syrup or sugar. So you'll be surprised. A lot of the ones that you think are quote unquote the healthiest are actually, if sugar's in the top 3 ingredients, it's the highest ingredient in weight of that product. So, we want to make sure you're getting your protein, but not with a bunch of sugar and syrup.
All right, let's get into a different type of diet. Intermittent fasting. All right, I have a big meal. Should I be skipping meals? What about intermittent fasting? Is there studies? Is it healthy, not healthy?
Sure. So intermittent fasting ties into the general concept of fasting, which intermittent fasting is extending the usual fast that we have overnight. So fasting is a very healthy concept for our bodies. It's a moment of rest. Hormonally, we have a whole different set of hormones that regulate our metabolism when we're fasting. And then when we're eating, we have a different set of hormones that help with that, right? So when we're fasting, we're going into these restful, or we're giving our metabolism almost like a rest. Now, it can happen usually overnight while we're sleeping, right? That's why getting adequate sleep is important for many reasons, but also for our metabolism and like our management of our hunger and fullness hormones, like all that ties in together. And then we wake up from in the morning and we break the fast, right, with breakfast, right? So that's a standard.
I never heard that. Okay.
So that's a standard way of looking how to eat for our metabolism, for how our body naturally functions in the morning. We break the fast. Now, intermittent fasting is not a diet that tells you what to eat. It tells you when to eat, right? So it controls the windows of eating. So By extending the fast, there may be some benefits. The thing is, the majority of the studies we have are in animals or in very small populations of very specific groups of people. So, like college age men, right? Like we can't generalize some of those studies on a woman that's going through menopause, right? That might be interested in intermittent fasting. So, we don't have all the research we need right now. I think we're going to be getting more research, but there are some concerns from like a nutritional standpoint. Like intermittent fasting is not something we can say is like good for everyone or encourage everyone to follow, especially people that have like diabetes or people that take medications in the morning and should have it with food, or people that have a history of an eating disorder or just have disordered eating habits. We don't want to add a more restrictive timing of the meals, to their already maybe restrictive way of eating. So those are some considerations with intermittent fasting. What I always like to conclude with and encourage is focus on the regular overnight fast, which is about 10 to 12 hours. Intermittent fasting encourages the extension of that to like 14 to 16 hours. But if you're fasting for 10 to 12 hours overnight, and also something I don't think we talk about enough is like fasting in between our meals for 3 to 4 hours. That way we give our bodies those little breaks and those little moments of fasting, not raising our insulin all day or, by grazing, a habit called grazing and snacking all day. There's a lot to take away from, this little conversation about intermittent fasting. So hopefully, if you feel like it's not for you, just focus on that 10 to 12 hours overnight.
Okay. But what about there was a pattern of these small meals throughout the day.
Right.
What about your because that's a little contrary to trying to fast in between meals. Are
Right.
small meals and snacking, of course, I don't want to use the word grazing, but small meals and snacking in a healthy fashion, is that also a good eating pattern?
Right. That got a little popular, maybe eating every
Right.
2 to 3 hours a day. And what most people realize that tried that is that it's not realistic to eat that often for most people that were trying to do that.
Work and they're doing
Right.
their life right.
Right. So the general recommendation when we eat a balanced meal, it should keep us satisfied for about 4 hours, plus or minus. So if we're going more than 4 hours, we want to have a snack in between to bridge us over. So a very common eating pattern for someone that's not doing intermittent fasting, but just having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they may also need a snack, depending if, when that 4 hour window gets expanded, which usually it's for people that work between lunchtime and dinner time, lunchtime being like at noon or 1, and dinner time being like at 7, like that's a 7 hour window. So the afternoon here in Miami, we usually have an opportunity for a
Coffee.
cafecito,
Right.
right? But I always like to encourage it's okay if you're not caffeine sensitive, you can have your coffee in the afternoon, but you might also need a snack to go with that coffee.
And that would be like an Oreo cookie or something like that?
Not
So
on most
let's
days.
talk about now, of course. So what are good snacks?
So a good snack would just be the same components of a meal, but like a mini meal.
Okay.
So a snack is intended to curb your hunger, not necessarily make you feel full. So sometimes if people snack and then they feel full, it's like, well, you had enough calories like a meal, but you thought it was a snack, right? Because that apple and can of peanuts, you ended up eating half the can of peanuts, right? Because we weren't being mindful. So someone might have thought they snacked, but they really had a small meal at that point. But a healthy snack has the same components of a balanced meal, which is like a source of carb balanced with some protein and or fats. So having an apple with some almonds, or so usually like or some Greek yogurt with fruit. These are components of a healthy meal, but we can turn them into a snack.
Okay. So we've talked about the low carb diets. We've talked about vegan, plant-based diets. We've talked about the intermittent fasting. Talk to us, cover you mentioned the Mediterranean diet. Tell everybody what the Mediterranean diet is, and then we'll go on to what is the best diet.
So the Mediterranean diet is actually not one set diet. It's a dietary pattern, which means that it's a collection of different ways of eating that have the same principles. So it's all the countries around the Mediterranean. You think of Greece and Italy, like common examples, but it also includes, all the countries around there, and they have key principles, which include some of the foods we mentioned earlier on the plant-based diet. So the foundation of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, beans and legumes are just such strong staples in the diet. And then we see seafood and poultry, and meats is almost like at the top of the pyramid because it's in a smaller amount of the Mediterranean diet pyramid. So you think of that base of the pyramid being all those plant-based foods. The Mediterranean diet is also a lifestyle. So the countries around the Mediterranean, they follow a different rhythm than what we do here.
Yeah.
So we can't deny that when we look at the benefits of this diet, that these people are also living different lives. They're much more active. They have less sedentary time. They have a stronger sense of community and spiritualism. So there's a lot of other wellness factors that play into this diet. But at the end of the day, this eating pattern has key principles that we can all look at to see how we can adapt to.
All right. So then, with all that being said, what is the best diet? What is the best pattern of eating?
The best pattern of eating is called a healthy eating pattern.
Okay.
That's individualized for each person.
Okay.
So if you're looking to be healthier, it's fine. It's a healthy eating pattern, which could be similar to Mediterranean dietary pattern. And it has that bulk of whole food, as much whole foods and as minimal processed foods, in the sense of minimal ultra processed foods. There's that middle part of some processing in some foods to help make life convenient, right? But we want to cut back on those ultra processed foods. And instead of just thinking what we can't have, the large cups of juice and sugar sweetened beverages and the ultra processed foods, we focus on what we can have, right? Like, let's make sure that those things are in our diet, because at the end of the day, if you do have that one cookie, is that really going to throw us off? Like, as if all those other things are there. And if we have it in just the right amount, no, it's okay. The other foods can fit in when we're following that bulk of the diet of that healthy eating pattern. Now, when we say the word diet, it usually means for weight loss.
Weight loss. That's where I was going to go next.
Yeah. So I recognize that. So, if we're aiming for health, healthy eating pattern, and for weight loss, healthy eating pattern with some calorie restriction. So
Okay.
the research shows whatever people can stick to is what's best for them. So it's how we can reduce our calories, and that technique can be different for everyone depending on what they're used to eating, and to see where we can shave off some calories here or there to have a calorie reduction, but also not too much reduction, right? Because too low calorie diet is also not good.
Yeah, I've always said that, people always ask me in my world of bariatric surgery and everything else, what is the best diet? I said, whatever eating pattern that you can live with for the rest of your life. They explained to me what they're doing today. I said, can you do this for the next 10 years?
Right.
Oh, no, I'm only doing it now for 6 months to lose weight.
Exactly.
Well, then what happens when you stop?
Exactly.
Right? It's not going to be the same.
Exactly.
Well,
and even sometimes just shifting to focusing on more whole foods. Like we see some research in that when you eat more of these whole foods versus the ultra processed foods, like the protein powders and the protein bars, which are not technically not good for us. It's just maybe the stuff added to like the bars, but there can be a more stronger sense of fullness when we eat our foods, which we know feeling full and satisfied is really important when we're trying to manage our weight and lose weight. So just focusing on the whole food, sometimes making that shift, not necessarily counting every calorie to make sure we're in a calorie deficit, but just shifting our habits to focusing on the right portions, making sure you have enough vegetables on your plate, less processed foods, feeling satisfied. That can also help some people. So
wow. So desserts.
yes.
Or let's say a bad food. Like, I want to splurge today and I want to have some pizza or I want to have some ice cream. My trainer tells me, have you ever seen an obese person become skinny by eating one salad? And I said, no. He goes, well, you'll never see anybody gaining weight by having one cookie
Exactly.
or one slice of pizza.
Exactly.
So are you going to tell me everything in moderation? Is that what you're going to tell me?
Yes.
I knew it because I could tell. So what about desserts? What about a slice of pizza? What about indulging in things that we love?
Everything in moderation. We can indulge in the sense that, to me, that means we're sitting and enjoying, but we're not overindulging, which usually means an overconsumption, which can happen when we restrict ourselves too much from the foods you love, and we wait too much time until we have it next, and then we not only indulge, we overindulge. So we want to break those patterns of overeating, and the way we do that is by introducing it a little more often. It doesn't mean every day overindulging that way either, but It just means enjoying it, balancing it. If we have pizza, it's okay. What's on my question would be like, what's the toppings, right? Because there's things
Vegetables, of
that,
course,
of
right?
course, not all the ultra processed meats, but how much pizza? Are we having some salad? A lot of pizza shops usually
Yeah,
have salad,
that's
that
true.
we can start
Yeah.
with before we dig into some of the slices of pizza. So, yeah, we're not here to say don't eat the foods you love. I would be a bad dietitian if I said that. And I also wouldn't
You'd be
like
a
someone,
liar.
I wouldn't like someone to tell that to me,
Right.
right? So I enjoy my desserts as well. And I believe everyone has foods they love and that they enjoy. And we have to learn how to include them in that healthy eating pattern. And it does come down to moderation. And I think also mindful eating, something we haven't talked about, which is just slowing down, enjoying those bites of dessert. So
Is that what mindful eating is? Just that, or is there more to that? More to it?
yeah, it's a whole concept of mindfulness around our meal times. It's
Okay.
beneficial for all of our meal times, but especially when it comes to desserts, it's a pause. It's putting a pause to, why am I eating this? Am I truly craving this? How much of this do I think I want to eat right now? So you're pausing before you eat. You can have a mindful moment while you're indulging in it. And then if you're going to go for another bite, pausing before we go for another bite,
Mm.
and
Am I
see.
really
Yeah.
hungry? Do I really need that? I think those right.
Yeah. And some people may actually realize like they are really hungry because they didn't eat enough that day. So the sweets seem really appealing at that moment because they're actually truly hungry. And when we're that famished, we will be craving anything and everything, right? So we have to pay attention to how we nourish ourselves and tuning in, mindfulness and mindful eating can help with that.
And distraction when you're eating, watching TV on your
Yeah.
phone, not good, right?
That's part of mindful eating too, or I should say mindless eating. So when we're distracted, it's very easy to technically just overeat, also not enjoy our food. So we're here to talk about, nutrition and what's good for us, what's healthy, but what about just, helping people improve their relationship with food and also enjoy their meals, like savor their meals. Like when was the last time you stopped and thought about like, all the taste profile of a meal that you had, right? And just really enjoyed it. So when it comes to mindful eating, it's a really helpful tool.
Wow, incredible information. So if we eat a well-balanced meal, we have all the foundation of the pyramid, we have some protein. Do we need vitamins? Do we need supplements?
That's a great question. A lot of people have that question about dietary supplements, vitamins, and minerals. So, as mentioned a little earlier, that food first approach is really important for getting in our nutrients. When we talk about carbs and proteins and fats, we isolate foods by their macronutrients, but all these healthful macronutrients also have micronutrients. So, when we talk about whole grains, like you're getting iron, you're getting the B vitamins, you're getting fiber, like you're getting your micronutrients. So, the goal is always to work on our dietary habits to have our micronutrients, from our food. But there are cases, especially, times in life like pregnancy or before or after surgery where we might need to boost our nutrients. So that's when supplements come into play. So it's always important to have these discussions with your healthcare provider or a dietitian, right? To help make sure that you are taking something that's necessary. And then the dosage is important because just because it's a vitamin or mineral doesn't mean we should go for the max dose. That's a very big misconception, right? So we want to make sure we're not taking too much. There are upper limits with vitamins and minerals that we can't get through food. It's only when we take supplements. And we have to remember that the way metabolism works is like if you take too much of something, like an antioxidant can turn into a pro-oxidant in our body in high doses. So, we want to make sure that we take the right amounts, not
Wow.
too much.
Yeah, so I guess the simple answer is yes, you may need some supplements.
You may, in certain parts of life,
Wow.
certain vitamins may be helpful. Yeah.
Well, I think we've really brought awareness to National Nutrition Month. We brought awareness with a dietitian. First of all, we know the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist, and we know that there's no best diet. So thank you. Thank you for educating us. Thank you for what you do for our community, and thank you for bringing awareness.
Thank you for having me here.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. So once again, Dr. Anthony Gonzalez here with Miami Community Health and Live Longer with Dr. Anthony Gonzalez. Remember, you are what you eat. So pay attention to what you're eating. Mindful eating, not mindless eating. Make sure you're having a well-balanced diet. There is no best diet that exists Obviously, whole plants and legumes and beans and protein is what's important. So take care of yourself and take care of your family.